we have Aly Wane, who will talk to us about his experience with the immigration system and came all the way from Syracuse, New York.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to say that I'm really moved by Kila's remarks because in my own life, my journey as an activist really has been a journey of healing, and I'm seeing that as I talk to people from different movements, I'm seeing some parallels. So my name is Aly Wane. I'm originally from Senegal. I'm now an undocumented immigrant in this country. But I prefer to call myself a world citizen because I believe that no human being is illegal and no human being doesn't belong. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my journey from fear to solidarity. And really, solidarity is the thing that started my journey of healing. And because I'm African, I'm going to start with a proverb, an African proverb, that goes, I am only well if you are well. And that has really sort of directed me in terms of getting me to understand that my own healing is linked to the healing of others. And I say this because being undocumented for many years, really I had internalized the idea that being here in this country, obviously number one was a crime, and number two, that I had no right whatsoever to say a peep about my condition, that I should, even be ashamed about walking the streets. And it took my encounter with other undocumented activists, and especially my sharing in their painful lives, for me to wake up and realize that it wasn't so much just about my personal story, but to realize that there was a systemic problem going on. I live in the city of Syracuse, and I've been an anti-war and economic justice activist for many years. And the one issue that I did not want to touch with a 10-foot pole was the issue of immigration, because being undocumented, I was terrified. I thought if anyone found out that, I'd be obviously in trouble. And I really had internalized that sense of shame, that sense of fear of being sort of this alien in this land. But a couple of years ago, a couple of us in the community were hearing stories of people in our community who were being disappeared from the streets of Syracuse. We were hearing stories of mostly young Latino people coming to us and telling us, my father went to the grocery store 2 days ago, we haven't seen him since. Or my mother was walking down the street, and she was picked up by the cops, and we haven't seen her since. And what we found out through our connections in the community was that these people were being picked up by immigration, customs enforcement, and ICE left and right. So what a bunch of us did is we created this group called the Detention Task Force in order to find these people in the different detention centers in our area, get them out. And at the time, I was very naive. Even as an undocumented immigrant, I still believed, well, this is the US. There's got to be a sense of fairness in this system. We try to pick out the cases of the most quote-unquote deserving immigrants. People who had absolutely no criminal records, people who had US citizen children, people who had US citizen spouses even. No dice. In most cases, we were not able to stop their deportations. In fact, the migration issue is really, it's a humanitarian crisis, really, in this country. It's estimated that there are 4 to 5 million US citizen children with at least one parent who's undocumented. And currently, under the law, this makes absolutely no difference whatsoever as to whether or not you're going to be deported. So my experience with the migration has been one of watching family after family after family being brutally, brutally separated. And frankly, that broke me. I remember actually, after not being able to stop the deportation of one particular family whose case we worked on for 2 years, who had US citizen children who were clearly traumatized by the experience. The man was originally from Honduras, the woman was a US citizen. We threw everything at this. We organized, we protested, we wrote letters to congressmen, judges, everything. no dice. The couple basically decided to take voluntary departure because they were too exhausted of fighting the system. And I actually remember breaking down in tears after that, feeling like I had failed as an organizer, that I did not do enough, that I did not make enough phone calls, that I hadn't reached out to enough people. I felt that it was all about me. And there was, on the one hand, it was a beautiful thing for me to have this sense of compassion, but there was also a little bit of ego there, because I thought that it was about me and my actions. I didn't yet understand that this was about systemic oppression. It wasn't until I started to make the connection in terms of figuring out how immigrants, were now the new terrorists. Obviously you talk about illegal aliens, you have to talk about, Mexicans coming from the border. In fact, a lot of the conversation in DC about immigration is really a national security conversation, if you ask me. I hadn't realized that immigrants were, the new profit cow for the prison industrial complex, that there was money to be made from this pain and from this separation. I hadn't realized that this conversation about immigration was an old conversation about citizenship, and therefore it is necessarily a conversation about race in this country. I mean, ever since the beginning of this nation, there has been a certain concept of who looks, quote unquote, like a US citizen. And I find it, I do not find it coincidental at all that Arizona, which is the state which really has pushed on experimentation in terms of anti-immigrant laws, was also the state that raised the most hackles over President Barack Obama's citizenship. You could rise to the top of the pile, but if you look a certain complexion, your citizenship, your humanity is still going to be challenged. One more thing. The migrants' rights conversation is also a labor rights conversation. Obviously, the hardest thing about it being undocumented is that legally you can't work, which of course throws you in this absurd catch-22, right? Because, quote unquote, if you don't work, then you're lazy, and if you do work, then you're taking a job from quote unquote, a US citizen. So you're in this impossible existential place and always being told that no matter what you do not belong. But once I got involved in this movement, once I got to share in the stories and the pain of other undocumented brothers and sisters, started to link this pain not just to my own, but to pain of other US citizens as well, that I started to heal and to start to think constructively about solutions. Let's take just one simple example. I'm undocumented, I don't have health care. I know plenty of US citizens, who don't have health care. Shouldn't we be talking about that instead? So I don't want to take too much time. I could talk about these issues for a really long time, but all I want to do in terms of starting this conversation, today is to really reinforce this idea that, my own healing has been linked to my willingness to be connected to the healing of others. And I feel a sense of tremendous gratitude, to all of the activists here in this room, to all the activists that I have met, whose stories of struggle have helped me figure out ways to heal and ways to think more deeply about human rights. And I'm looking forward to hearing from other activists in this conference in order to think about points of solidarity, points of intersectionality, figuring out ways to help each other out, because my humanity is linked to yours and vice versa. Thank you.